How you feeling?
Much better.
Okay. All right. So I welcome you all to Typography. Today's Tuesday, August 10th, and I'm happy to see all of you. And I'm glad you're here because I think the most important thing about the fact that this is the most important class you'll ever take this semester it is that you're here. And I think a lot of learning hopefully goes on in the classroom, I hope. I also hope you enjoy the class. So both of those things. So this is what I'd like to talk about today. First off, I want to say to each of you, every time we start the class, we start with this typographical publication assignment right here, which you notice is due in my hands May 8th. May 8th is the last day of school, and then the week following that is finals week. And what May 8th means is that your book, when you walk through the door to class, has to be printed in your hands, and you place it in my hands. If it's not here, there is no, oh my God, the dog ate my homework. Oh my God, UPS didn't deliver it on time. Oh my God, I didn't go to my house yesterday to receive delivery of it. There is none of that. And I'm telling you this not to be disrespectful to you. I'm telling you this so you all respect deadlines, because in my real world as a graphic artist, I know I mentioned this before, when a client has a deadline, I have to meet their deadline. I can't tell them, I'm sorry, your trade show booth didn't arrive, and they stand there with a card table and folding chairs, right? I can't do that. I have to make sure that it arrives. And I white knuckle it. You know that phrase, white knuckle it, right? Where you're nervous. I get nervous if I'm too close to my deadlines for things. So I like to create cushion. I like to create the idea that there's snow and FedEx doesn't get my book to me on time because the flight is delayed for a day or two. All of that is really important, and I like to have a backup plan. So the reason why I ask each of you to upload your typographical publication work in progress is this is certainly not a project that you should believe for a second that you don't need feedback on before you submit your file, okay? You're going to spend money printing your file. You're certainly going to spend a lot of time and effort creating the book. It's not something you could do last minute. When we do last minute projects, we miss the details. And the level of professionalism that's required for this publication is very high. The expectations are very high. Here's the grading rubric for the project here. And we went over this last time. I'm not going to read it to you because you can read it yourself. But all of these details I'm very critical about. You know, all of you had to come up with your concept of what meant something to you, right? But this is a typography class. So Amanda, do you care if I talk about your project a little? Okay. So Amanda actually shared her project with me last week, and she hasn't uploaded it here. And what I noticed about it is she did what she loves, which she did image editing, right? And that's where I saw you spend all your time, because clearly it's what you enjoy. It's a natural for you. Am I right? Okay. So she has beautiful images that she's going to include in her typographical publication book. But I am not only going to evaluate the professionalism of her image quality, but it's a typographical publication book. So the things that I look at in your book, I know we did a little bit of examples last week on it. And I keep repeating this. I hope I'm not too redundant for you guys about it, because I feel like each time you might listen to it with a different ear for it, because you might be on a different part of your book. But when you read any book, when you go to any play, when you go to any concert, there's a beginning to it where they get you acclimated, like what it's about, what you're going to feel. They kind of help guide you through it. I mean, experientially, I just went to a concert this past weekend, like something I'd never done before. It was a stand-up only concert. My daughter laughed. What are you talking about? You've never been in a stand-up only concert. That's the only kind I've been to, she says. where there were no chairs. In other words, there was no stadium seating. It was just everybody was standing. There was 150 people standing in a venue. John's looking at it like, oh my God, how'd you do that, Vicki, right? How many of you have been to a stand-up only venue for a concert, right? Second nature for you guys, new for me. And so as I'm there, I'm thinking, okay, you get the feel for it. You start in the concert, you get the feel for the music. There's like the warm-up act. You get to know what it's going to be about. And then it escalates. It escalates with a greater excitement. You got to change up the mix so you don't get bored with the same sound all throughout the concert. And then at the end, you escalate to a big crescendo and you have a lot of satisfaction, right? A book is the same way. A movie is the same way. A story is the same way. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your typographical publication isn't going to be anything different. Your typographical publication is going to have an exciting cover that's going to draw the reader in and say, I want to read that. Then you're going to read the title page and you're going to look at the beautiful craft and art of how you handle typography on your title page, on your cover, on your title page. And then you're going to look, there's a predictability in publications that help create order. In other words, you have numbered pages just so if you want to refer to a page in a book, you have the numbers and the sequence of those numbers. And is it Amanda who doesn't want the page numbers? Which one of you didn't want page numbers? Well, anyway, page numbers sometimes don't look pretty. Well, they don't have to be big. They can be art. We talked about that last week, I think. Different ways to handle page numbers and different layouts and so forth. And then we played a little bit with how to work with a grid last week and so forth. I want all of you to get feedback on your publications so you know what you might be missing. All of you tend to cram, I'm glad you came. All of you tend to cram most of your content too close to margins. You create squishy margins and tight gutters. You want to make sure you have white space and breathing space. Unless your book is about a planning book about density, and it's not a joke, or overcrowding, or different environment, city environment compared to the countryside. City environment, dense. Countryside, breathable. That's the mood and the tone that you set as a designer with your aesthetics. I want you to have different type studies. I want you to print proofs of your book so you see how the type looks. I want you to have the ability to notice how poor hyphens look or widows look, right? That's the kind of feedback you're going to want about your publication. And now we're exactly probably 4 weeks out from you handing a printed book. A printed book that the first week of class or second week of class we discussed with the notice that this publication is going to take you all semester to work on because it's time consuming. So I encourage you all to keep coming to class with feedback. So we'll talk about it. Are there any questions about it? Is there any question about how it's evaluated and so forth? Yes, sir.
So we could take text from like any kind of the subject and put it into our book. Is that okay? Or do you have to write the copy or credit the article later on?
Oh, so that's a good question. If you want to copy somebody's text,
yeah,
for information about something, if I were you, I would create a bibliography in the back of your book because you know how to do that. You're a student, right? So I would either attribute it in your text on that page if you don't want a bibliography, like a little tiny 6-point footnote. But if it's not your original words, I would attribute your source.
Okay.
Now, if you copy it from the internet, what happens is when you copy text from the internet, you get hard returns in what you copied. And you don't get good punctuation, and it may not be spelled properly. Just because it's published doesn't mean it's correct, okay? So it's still on your shoulders to spell check it and all that kind of stuff, okay? That's a really good question to ask, yes. I encourage you to add, your book's very personal to you. It's a topic you care about. I would encourage you to find maybe a balance. Well, first off, you don't need a lot of text. Don't misunderstand. There's a hierarchy of text, and I know we have talked about this, where you might, this would be, let's say, either a headline or a subhead. This would be considered body copy. And this down here, a totally different font and a smaller type, might be a caption. You might have something called a sidebar text. Does everybody know what a sidebar text is? Does anybody not know what a sidebar is? Okay, so let's just pull up a picture. Let's just look. Let's see what shows up for us. Here's a good example of what I call a sidebar. So I know you can't see this very clearly, and it's an iPod. But basically what you got going on here without even seeing it clearly is you can tell there's a headline. You can tell there's a byline, the name of the person who wrote the article. Even though this is a web page, even though this is digital page, you can tell there's body copy. And the text that's handled on the side differently would be considered a sidebar. And in a publication, here, this is more what I was thinking. There you go. So, interesting headline. Notice it's not flesh left necessarily. Notice it's not centered. Notice they handle the type in a unique way. Notice that if the word the was they, that the descender in that type, the descender like a Y in they, would overlap the word beat. That's because the leading is so tight, but it's beautiful, right? It's a for your book covers even, look at different ways of arranging type. This is a really nicely laid out page. Let's talk about this construction here, because this is a news magazine layout, for example, and your publication books probably won't have so much text. But let's call out here all the different ways they handle type, even though the page has order to it. Do you guys agree it looks organized and easy to follow? Okay, so headline. Then they have a subhead here, which is a secondary headline. And notice it's not under the headline. Notice it goes beside the word on. This stuff doesn't like magically happen. You have to plan and play with it. Okay. These are sidebars. Sidebars for me, when I design something, sidebar type is completely different than body copy type. So for example, here, let's do headline, subhead, body copy. Notice that this designer chose to indent a paragraph instead of adding space after to differentiate the paragraphs. Flush left, ragged right, and they started the beginning of the story with a different font weight. It's bold and it's larger, right? So that says, here's the beginning of our story. It's kind of what you might start with the beginning of a chapter. And then to break up the density of all that text, they did what's called a pull quote here, which is really an excellent example for your book jackets, for example. A pull quote's where you're going to pull out one excerpt of type that you want to highlight, because we kind of scan the page. Like if I were to scan the page, I'd say the beat goes on, I read the subhead, and then I go to the pull quote hierarchically. Do you guys agree with me? Yeah, okay. Because then I'm like, oh, is this interesting or not interesting? And then I decide whether I want to read the article. So a pull quote, and notice the pull quote totally interferes with the alignment of the page. This pull quote overlaps intentionally and creates a text wrap in the first column here, right? Y'all follow that? All right. The sidebar here is, that's a serif font, like the same font that's used here in the headline, but it's a bold weight of this subhead here. But the body copy on the sidebar, notice there's space after each paragraph. Notice there's no indent at the beginning of the paragraph. And this is sans serif type in the sidebar. Handled totally differently than the body copy, so it looks different and feels separate. So I went on this tangent because I was talking to you about grabbing text from, let's say, an outside source. But you might have a either the outside source might be your sidebar, or a sidebar for you, for example, might be your commentary on your experience of that position, that hold or move or whatever, right? Or yours might be a commentary, an anecdotal story of, well, the first time I did that, I fell flat on my back and blah, blah, blah. You know, to make it a personal, right? All right. And you're certainly welcome to add icons in your type publication book. You can use glyphs, you can create any graphics, you can have as many graphics as you want, but it is not only a graphic book. I evaluate you on how you take all this information and lay it out in an interesting way from page to page to page. And notice each page, even here, is not identical, right? And then here, this would be like a footnote or a caption. And even in that little caption right there, you've got a different color head for that caption, which is what I call a sub-head. And here's your little caption type, which would be different than the sidebar. Do you get the idea of all the variety of type that you can use? Now, don't exceed 2 type families in your publication. So in other words, you might pick a serif font and then a sans serif font, and they each have a family of type. Don't go crazy. Sometimes people think it's great to make every chapter headline or every headline some new creative font. It'll just look disorganized and not have continuity of design. Okay. So your question of, can I use outside sources? Yes, attribute it properly. When you create your layouts, make sure they're interesting. Remember, everything doesn't have to be linear. Here's another sidebar, right? This is a really busy page. Hard to make these organized. Notice headline. Notice overlapping type. Notice a subhead over here to the right of my news. Does this help you? All you got to do for inspiration is do what I do. You just Google something and start looking at pages that hold your interest. These are all super text dense pages. You could simplify all of this, for example, by making this a single photo and not having more text here. But find pages that you like. Also find a theme that holds it together. You know, I don't know if there's characters or symbols or something that's appropriate for what each of you might do, but just get inspired. This came from editorial layouts on Pinterest, right? So I'm going to get a big Pinterest page of layouts here. There. There you go. Look at that. Intriguing book cover. Simple page layouts, right? Find something you love the look of and steal their ideas. Right? Just looking at this publication and seeing how they handle things, doesn't that help you get inspired? Yeah. And you'll see that they're repeating the same grid layout. They're just aligning things differently. And what gives this continuity, if you look at these 3 pages right here, what gives it continuity is that all of the photographs, this is something that's dangerous when I see you. What's dangerous when you take a variety of sources of photos is you don't get a cohesive style, but you look at all of these photos and they all have this soft white, I'm going to call it white, even though we know it's shades of gray or neutral color background. Everything's really clean and neutral background. Understand, I probably look at this page right here. Oh, well, let's see. Let's see what we get here. There we go. Well, first off, I'd say to you, this page, that you wouldn't be able to read those words. I'd complain about it. And what I'd suggest to you is all you need to do is go into Photoshop in this big leading photo and just kind of do a little airbrushing with a little opacity of white to kind of gray out that and soften that area. You don't want to lose all this beautiful texture back here because it's what makes it beautiful, but you might just go in and just create a little softness, right? And which other page was I going to comment on? It's just making me hungry. This one. You will not at all be able to read any type on that little chocolate souffle business there. So that would be bad news to me as a designer. So you have an option. You just make a little text wrap around it, which would have been my solution. This one's not so bad because it's on white, but this is just, it's not going to work. And if your style is, I want to show the full photo, no problem, then find a different solution for how to handle the type, right? You could scale this down here. You could scale this photo down here, create a larger field of white here, and place all your text in a field of white here. There's other solutions, and you're the designer, so you get to control it. But these are all the types of things, these are all the elements that I will look at as we evaluate your publication. And also, when you walk in here 1 month from today with your printed book in hand, you will have already uploaded by 1 p.m. the deadline. You will have uploaded your book, PDF. You do not need a design brief because I know they take too much time. And you will have uploaded a photo of your printed publication, added it to your PDF of your book that you sent off to print. Okay? Just want you to have all the parameters so you're not taken by surprise on any of it. All good for you guys? Anything? Oh, yes. Thank you. Oh, that's such a good question. No? I don't see why not. If you printed it, is it because you'd print it here? Or you just wonder, design-wise? I'm sorry. That's fine. No problem. If you print it like a blurb or something, they're still going to end up using CMYK. They'll still end up printing it with a color printer for you.
No, you can get black and white.
Can you?
Yeah.
Is it cheaper?
Yeah, you can choose to come in black and white if you install the blurb app during design.
Okay. You're absolutely welcome to. But then what you have to think about is, why are you doing it in black and white? And does it enhance your message? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what you think about. I don't remember what your topic is. Right. Which is going to, in all honesty, make your type all the more important, right? Anything else come up for anybody? Okay. So today we'll look at the few uploads of the type publication. Oh, yes, sir.
You have a cream option, actually. Do you know what the difference is between white and cream?
Sure, I do. Sure, I do. Cream is referring to paper stock. And it would be the color of cream, like an off-white, softer. And when you print on cream, there's kind of a heightened elegance to it, particularly in black and white, and a softness. We've already talked about the fact that you can get sample papers, so you might want to look. Also, in the back cabinet there, which I think is still unlocked, there's probably samples of cream stock, but it's kind of eggshelly. It's just soft. Yeah, you have. For sure.
A good place to go is Michael's, there's a wall of just paper, just a book. I don't know if you knew that, but you have like cardstock and paper. It's at Michael's. Yeah, at the arts and crafts store, and they just have it all there. So it's nice just to go and kind of look and think. You don't necessarily buy it, but just look at it. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing, you probably all Googled this for your design inspiration because nobody raised their hand on this, which was funny to me. because all of you did this, which is for book covers, you had a design inspiration upload to your Google Drives. And you all spent time looking at book covers that were designed as type only. And that's what I did, type only book covers, and I Googled it. And you can look at the different ways of how things have been handled. With your type only book cover, I do not mind if you manipulate the type, right? I don't mind if you do a special effects to the type, but I don't want you to be using photographs or illustrations for your cover. You can use glyphs, you can use embellishments, which you would find as a glyph anyway, and you can use fields of darks and lights. But I don't want you to pick publications that are using illustrations to rely on your design. Okay, is that clear for everybody? All right. So what I want to do before I critique, let's see. You want to start with type publication feedback first? Does that work for you guys? Okay. So here we are on our homepage. So whose is uploaded here? And where? Is it down here with this thing? Double exclamation point. So I talked to you about yours, Susie.
Yes.
So I'm going to go see who else is uploaded here. Did anybody else upload here? Oh, that's where you put yours? Okay. You know, maybe I should get more organized. These are a little confusing. Here we go. Right now, right? You want to come up here? Okay. And Jackie, do you want to talk about yours too today? Okay, come on, Holly. And that's the only two we have today, right? You, the two of you. Anybody else? Okay.
We're starting with the type book, right?
Yeah, let's start with your typographical publication, not your book cover. You are graded, by the way. You will be given a grade for uploading to the discussion your 10 spreads on your type publication. So you will lose 100 points if it's not done, just so you know. Like, it's really, it's a real assignment expectation.
So all the photos in here are low quality because I forgot to package my thing, so none of them were linked, but they are better quality than what they look like. So I don't have like the cover page or the like all the empty pages or like the copyright and stuff yet. But this would be like the first one explaining the book and what it's about, which is my paintings, and then typefaces that I think go along with them. And then all of the spreads are pretty similar. But like I was wondering, because I was like doing the type that I think goes with it as the title, and then like as the subheads, and then I was gonna have the body copy like all the same throughout to like have it more cohesive, but I'm not sure if like having every single one different is a little bit too
What do you want to vary? Oh, you want to vary the title?
Yeah, the title and the like subheads, but I don't know if that's too much. But like I don't know how else I would like show, oh, this is why, like this is the type that I think matches the.
And what's your introduction? Type goes with your pictures?
Yeah, like the type that like has the same feeling or like the same emotion.
Got it.
So I'm
how many paintings do you have? Drawings, watercolors? What is it? Watercolor?
They're all paintings, like oil and acrylic. I haven't taken pictures.
We have talent here, don't we?
I was gonna say, did you say you did all these?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm totally impressed right now.
Yeah,
you.
we're all
That's amazing.
But right now I only have 4 of them, but I do have more. I just haven't photographed all of them.
How many will you put in?
I believe I have at least like 8, maybe more. Like I don't have that many paintings. I have more drawings that I could do as well, so I'll include those most likely. But yeah, I'm trying to a lot of my paintings I gave away, so I'm trying to track them all down and
Are
get
you?
good photos of them.
Good. It's actually really a good idea. Okay. So, and you have a lot of drawings, like sketches and stuff?
Like charcoal drawings that are like finished and pencil drawings.
Okay.
So I'm probably gonna include those because I don't think I have enough paintings honestly to do a full book.
All right. Can you scroll back up, please? You're going to be so happy to have this. Can I read your introduction? Will you read it out loud?
Yeah, it says, typography is everywhere whether we notice it or not, and it is used to convey a message, feeling, or idea. Typefaces are chosen very specifically for their intended usage to help the reader understand what is being said, and even if we don't notice this consciously, the effect is still there. Art is the same way, although it's often easier to know the feeling that a work of art is trying to achieve. However, both can result in varying emotions from individual to individual. The following artwork are all pieces created by me, and the titles are in typefaces that I believe match the feel of the accompanying painting. I'm probably going to edit it because it's kind of like it doesn't flow very well right now. But
Actually, it's really lovely. But I have some thoughts about this. Does anybody want to comment besides how brilliant Holly is in her painting? Right? Your paintings are beautiful. Okay, so, and what were you going to call your book?
I'm still working on the title. I'm not sure yet.
Okay. I'm going to move close to you so I can record this for you. How's that? So I understand. Can you all hear me? Yeah? You can hear me way back there? Because I'm facing Holly when I'm talking. But I understand that you're making this publication acknowledging that it's for typography. But hands down, your artwork is so beautiful that this book will serve you better as a portfolio of your art and not as a typographical publication. Okay? So, and it's being recorded, so you're cool. Which is, I would not, even though you articulated your opening paragraph and your intention beautifully, personally, you're investing so much time in this publication, and it's such a showpiece for your artwork, right? Because maybe you'll get employed, or you'll become famous, or you will use as a portfolio. Do you have a 4-year degree yet?
No.
No. You may use it as an opener to apply to a school or something like that. I would not focus at all on typography. I would eliminate your intro paragraph and I would change it to a description of you personally and your art and what your art means to you, kind of about the artist. Mm-hmm. And I would make this book about the artist, not about typography. And then I would go, so let's go to the girl with the water bucket. Okay. Girl with water bucket copy. Copy?
Because this is made by a famous painter, and then in my class we had to copy a famous artist.
All right. So I would like to suggest this. So I'm going to point while I talk about this. So here's your title, and here's the title of the art. I think Oil on Canvas and September 25th should be smaller, like a secondary thought, and should be indented because right now it holds the importance out where the quote is. So if this is 12-point type bold, typewriter font, I don't know what it is, then if this is 12, then I'd make this maybe like 9, and I would indent it, and I would tighten your leading, because this would be like your footnotes of what it's made of and when you made it. And then about the piece would be, this is your head, let's call it, this will be your subhead. So if this is, let's say this is 14, this becomes 9, this may be 12. Did you follow me? Mm-hmm. And then decide why you're indenting, if you wish to. Is that what you like aesthetically? I don't know why this font looks different to me than this. Is it the same?
It should be.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know
is.
why it looks different. And then you write your body copy. What you might have to give you ideas to start to fuel what you would say. You could have, for example, is this the fold or is this the fold?
Yeah, it's more to the right.
So this is the fold.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would give far more margin space. So if here's your fold, you have really tight margins here. I would create more margin space. Most of you are not going to have a lot to say. My experience is most of you do not fill up pages. So the larger your margins, the more white space you have, the cleaner your design looks. Okay? Always keep in mind that when you create your publication, you're going to get even something swallowed up in the fold here. So account for it, right? Just keep it in mind. So let's say you move this over. Maybe, so if this, let's say, here's your fold. Here's where your body copy starts. Maybe you might have a footnote that says, it may be in your body copy, but I was going to say, you know, I was drawn to this painting by Winslow Homer because of his use of cadmium yellow and cadmium red, and I appreciated the sunlight on the young girl's face and blah, blah, blah. That may be your body copy. That may be what you say. Or you might say Winsor Newton oils, cadmium red, and you might list the paints you used on the color palette. Like that could be a caption, just dissecting it, how you created it. And now you've added a headline, I would have labeled that like Dayton Materials. I would have labeled that as subhead. This is like if I had a paragraph style sheet. You follow what I'm saying, you guys, right? And then this would be your body copy, and then you might have a caption, right? And then page number might be different. Also, watch your page numbers that they're never too close to the edge of the trim, because they're never trimmed perfectly. Okay, just so you know, that's what happens. Let's go to your next page. And I would be consistent. So what I would do is I would be totally consistent with paragraph style sheets throughout, okay? And the only thing you might choose to do is flop your pages. That's okay, right? Your text doesn't always have to be on the right. You can flop it back and forth. And so let's say now you've got your 4 paintings in here, and you're done with your 4 paintings, and let's say you've got 16 charcoal drawings or pencil drawings. Maybe you make 1 page of a grid of, or maybe you make 4 pages, 4 pencil drawings, 4 charcoal drawings, 4 pencil drawings, 4, right? And then maybe you make a facing page that has in the same placement as these 4 images. Maybe you make type boxes that describe each of those on the facing page, right? And that's your new, fresh layout look, right? And again, you take the same type usage and use it hierarchically in those boxes, but now you've got a fresh new layout, right? Like that cookbook I just showed a second ago with the, right? And so now you've got your first section paintings, your second section's drawing, maybe your third section is about the artist, or your intro is about the artist, and maybe you're done. Maybe you're done, or maybe your last section becomes any other art you wish to include if you think it fits your look. Like I would keep everything fine art, I wouldn't mix digital with fine art. I'd stick to one focus, because obviously you have digital art too in your portfolio, but I'd make this a book about your fine art, and I'd make it a book about you. I wouldn't make it a book about typography. You're going to get evaluated typographically based on all my criteria I've listed. That's how you're going to get evaluated. But I think it's going to do you a disservice to tie it to type when your art's so strong. Does that help you? Yeah, it's probably a big relief, isn't it? Right. That's good. That's what I think is your great success for it, because you have beautiful things to show. I think it's nicer to do it that way.
Okay, cool. And you think it's a good idea, like, if I like were to flop this to like make it more interesting, like throughout the painting section, and then when I come to the charcoal and then do like the 4 grid thing that you said,
Yeah.
like it's smarter to separate those, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't combine them. I would, so basically, and then you'll have a table of contents, paintings.
Yeah.
And then under your table of contents, you'll have the 4 paintings and then pages they're found on.
Mhm.
And then your second section will be called drawings, right?
Yeah.
And then the name of those drawings and the pages they're found on. And I don't know how much more work you have, you know, and if that's all, that's all. Like, don't just pack it if you're not proud of it.
Mhm.
Only put work that really makes you feel really proud. But don't be too self-critical, because we never like what we do, right? Yeah, that part too, right? Okay, do you guys, how that sound to you guys? Does that help you for your own books too? Okay. Good.
Yes.
Glad to have
Thank
the
you.
feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. Okay, so Miss Jackie, you want to come up and chit chat?
Okay. So my book is going to be based off horror movies I like, my favorite ones. It's going to be called Fear, and they're basically going to be kind of like movie posters. Going to design a small symbol on Illustrator, pick specific fonts that like relate to the movies. Put a quote, if not from the movie, like something based off the movie. Director, the day it was directed. And I'm not sure if I want to put 2 facing pages like with each other. And on the other side, put why I like the movie so much. Why it stood out to me, and yeah. A little plain right now, and I didn't design the symbols, we just threw them in there just for a concept. But
Okay, so all of your pages are going to be movie posters, but they're all going to be presented like they're presented here, not as a poster on a wall,
not as a
but
poster.
just one page as a graphic.
Yeah.
And you don't, what does it mean you don't want facing pages?
No, I do want facing pages.
And is it going to be poster facing a different poster?
No. It's just going to be this page, and then next to it, it's going to be the same color background and everything, but it's just going to be a paragraph of why this movie stood out to me so much, what I liked about it.
So if you go to your next page, your layout is similar for your poster. So is every poster layout similar?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the S for?
Oh, it's going to be
It's
the
a
sand.
placeholder.
Yeah, it's going to be the sand dune snake. Maybe they'll just. But I'm going to design
Sand
it.
dune.
But yeah,
The sand dune.
it's the snake that comes out.
Oh, the snake.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't remember that. Okay. And how do you feel about the white type on the page?
On this page?
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Go to the next page and see what you got. And go to the first page. The abduction. And what's page 5? Oh, that's
Oh, this was just a blank one.
I think, well, does anybody else have thoughts? But can you go to your poster? Anybody have thoughts for Jackie about this? Okay, I have thoughts, which I hope help you. So what I feel like you kind of modeled this after, you must have really liked 2 of the books. The one about bad language, which was really clean? Do you remember looking at the example of it?
Not that one. I remember the other.
And then you remember the one with the movie icon
Yeah,
and the
that
favorite
one.
movies. Okay. That's the one I feel like you modeled this one after. What's going to happen, and it is a flaw actually in that book, is there wasn't enough variety going on. I feel like first off, you have an 8.5 by 11 page. I don't know if that's going to be the size you're going to actually do this in.
Mm-mm.
Right. So you're not in the format of your publication
Mhm.
yet. You don't have the page numbers yet, and you don't have the facing pages yet. I know you told me it was
Yeah,
rough.
this
You
weeks
already
ago.
warned me because you did this in March.
Yeah, I did this.
I see you did it like a month ago now. And did you update it today with something
No.
new? No. Okay. So I think that you need to do your spreads
Mhm.
before I comment. And when you go to the purple page, I think that if you're going to use black type, it should all be black type if that's your intention.
Okay.
Like I think the white doesn't work. It's feels inconsistent. Like when you go to the next powder blue page, you can't read it very well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get boring, to be honest with you. So until I see your facing pages and how you handled that content,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yet what your success is going to be. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. I understand. I know what you're after if that's the look you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have yet to design your own original icons, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fine. Model it after that. If that's what appeals to you. Set up your facing pages. Make sure
Mhm.
when you design it the size you want to print it at.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll look at it when you got all your elements in place.
Okay.
Okay? Does that help you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm worried you're going to get, because even your posters look so much the same. And I wouldn't call his posters. Like his book was not posters.
Yeah, no.
His book was logo design.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not calling yours logo design, you're calling yours posters. And if you want to design a poster that has a lot of variety, that's not centered,
Mm-hmm.
and just type, but you design a really wide range of posters, I think that would be more interesting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I don't know what that yet means. I don't know if that's a good thing or not a good thing.
Means I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I just think you're going to get, I think this is going to get, yeah, it's going to be repetitive. And I don't know until I see your facing pages. I really like the idea of type posters for these movies. I
Mhm.
really like that. But what you've shown us is 4 examples of exactly the same thing, just
Yeah.
changing typefaces. So that's, sorry, forgive me, but it's boring, right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, so if you want to make a poster that's type only, then make each one unique.
Okay.
And then I think it'll feel much more powerful for you.
I get what you mean.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So try it. See what you think.
Okay.
You have a real clean aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
You have a good sense of hierarchy already. I can see all that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'd love to see is some more soul coming into this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know this is from a month ago, and that you've probably been too busy to revisit it.
Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully it just maybe ignites a little fire for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. So anybody else on type publications? Okay. Does anybody want to share their book cover design brief so far? Okay. Come on up.
So the hardest part for me was to pick out the book.
Oh, yeah.
That's
So many great choices.
Oh my gosh, it's just ridiculous. Okay, where am I? Where am
Just go up, scroll up, and you'll get to home. Keep going.
Oh.
And then you'll know where you put it.
Discussions.
Yeah.
Load. So I picked Mary Poppins.
just because I don't know, just for a lot of different reasons. But I think the main reason was that there was so many amazing quotes that came out of that movie, and so I found it creatively very easy in my brain, of just ideas that hit me, and so I just went with it. So I've committed. So this is where I'm at. So I found this really cool picture of her, and it was interesting reading about her. I didn't know much about her. You know, I mean, you know the book and you know the story, but you know the author. So she's got an interesting past. And then I say there that, you know, there's been obviously many covers that have been created for this book. Now there's many different versions of stories within Mary Poppins, but I'm focusing on just the original, you know, for one that came out. There's series of different ones too. So this is just several covers that I found, but there's, I think, a lot more. And then here's quotes that I focused on a lot of, because I think that's going to have a lot to do with how I'm going to design this cover. And then, of course, the reviews, many reviews, but this was just a handful that I placed on there. And then describing words. This was late last night, so don't ask me why I chose those words. But that's what I went with. And then fonts, they're driving me up the wall, so I don't know if I like any of these. I'll just be quite honest, that was really frustrating last night. And then colors, I kind of go back and forth because there's a lot of this, you know, this doesn't really show the colors on there very well, but there's like that soft pink, very feminine feel to it with her. And then there's this dark, stormy sky, umbrella rain feel to it. So I'm kind of like weighing my pros and cons on just what I want it to look, how dramatic I want it to look, how feminine I want it to look, or how whatever I want it to look. So that's all I got. That's where I'm at.
That's great. It's a great start.
Yeah. Yeah, so next, the sketches, I have a few, but I didn't quite get that on here. But okay. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, I'm really excited about it. It's going to be fun. I think it's a very upbeat, you know, I mean, how can you not like Let's Go Fly a Kite and Supercalifragilistic? How can you not have fun?
That's true.
So so I'm excited about it. I'm happy I chose it. I wanted to do a children's book. That's where I started. I just was looking at all these children's books, and that's, there was a lot out there, but this is what I just came up with.
That's good. It's a great start.
Okay.
Does anybody else have their book cover they want to share? Yeah.
So I'm doing Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and this is just the synopsis.
There you go.
The biography and the reviews, and then there's been like a lot of book covers of this book, but I just put up the original one, which is this one, and then this is the most recent one, which is actually the book that I own. And I don't dislike these covers. This one feels like a little bit boring to me, and like you kind of just I don't know, it does relate to the book. It's not random, but it's just like every time I looked at the book, I was just kind of like felt whatever about it. And then this one actually I feel like represents it pretty well. Like it looks innocuous, which is kind of like what the plot of the book is about. Like it's like about this town that's like really sleepy and like nothing happens there, but then all the residents start becoming vampires, and like only a few people know about it, and they have to like try to fight them and stuff. And so like it has this black background that's really heavy, so like obviously something dark's happening, but then you just get this little window like, oh, everything's fine, no one's noticing that nothing's wrong. So I actually really like that. And I think it's interesting how they made the type so big, because like his name is always huge on all of his books, because that's like what's going to sell it. And then these are the fonts that I was looking at. Some of them are like really hard to read, so I'm not going to do any of those. Right now I'm leaning towards this one, just because I like how it mimics that, oh, that's in the other ones, and I feel like it kind of goes with it. And like those little sharp spikes kind of remind me of vampire teeth. And then the color studies, like the top one I took from the second book cover, and then this one's like from the original one, and then this one's just like my own that I did. And I like want it to be like probably dark on the darker side, but like I also definitely probably will use red because like to symbolize like blood, and then maybe like purple or something to like for nighttime, or blue, because a lot of it happens at night because they can't go out in daylight, of course. But yeah, that's where I am right now.
Okay, it's a good start. It's a good start. So I want to bring up something that is in Holly's cover. Is there anybody else who uploaded? Oh, then let's do yours. I'm sorry. Come on. Well, come on up. But when we do book designs, you know, most people, Holly already said this, most people buy Stephen King books because they're Stephen King books. Like, you probably can't name all his titles, but you can name Stephen King, and you know what you're going to get with him, right? Or do you know? You're shaking your head. Yeah, you know Stephen King?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of moving too. Like
yeah, you're right. You're right. Movies also.
Scary.
So part of what your job is to decide what makes your book sellable, what makes your cover sellable. Who are you selling? Are you selling Stephen King, or are you selling the title Salem's Lot? What, you know, those are all the factors that you consider as well. So, all right, you come grab yours. I don't know where you put it, but
Right. So I did mine. So on the book, The Four Agreements. It's one of my favorite books.
do you reread it?
Yeah. Reminders. Yeah, it's basically a self-help book from a series by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I just thought the color palette was too bright and very, I mean, I know it has to do with Before the Aztecs, how the Mexicans but I just didn't like how bright it was, and I think since it was published around 21 years ago, it can be due for a redesign. These are my font ideas. I'm most likely going to end up going with this one right here. Some inspirations. Yeah. Color palettes. I kind of want to do just plain black and white. I like the idea of, I mean, I'm sketching some ideas up right now, but I like the idea of like handwritten, the four agreements. And yeah.
That's good. That's a good start. And will you go to your inspiration? Okay.
Just a lot of repetitive.
So, right, but good thoughts for your design inspiration. Lots of deep, you know, information for you. Mm-hmm. So that's great. Great. Okay, so to help all of you, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to help do a couple things. Let me know if you think this sounds good to you. Which is, I'd like to help you think how to build the book cover in InDesign, because you have flaps and you have a spine and so forth. Okay, I'd like to show you how to do that. So you could set up your files. There's two ways I always think of doing it. and then maybe show you how to work with type in Illustrator, so you can maybe rethink just not setting type in straight lines and centered and flush left and stacked and all that. Would that be helpful? Be great. Okay. So first thing I want to start with is something just as simple as this, which is right here. So when you have your book, did anybody bring a hardbound book today for any reason? No? Okay. So when you have your hardbound book, pick a hardbound book off your shelf, wrap paper around it, even if you have to tape sheets of paper together, trim out your piece of paper so it covers your book, and make sure you have flaps on the inside. And make your folds. So make a fold where the flap is, make a fold where the spine starts, make a fold where the back cover is, and then wrap around and your back flap. You all follow me? So let's say you get a book that is, the face of the book is, let's say, 6 inches by 8 inches, right? And let's say it's a Stephen King book, so it's fat. And so that means that you might have an 1.5 inch spine, okay? And usually the type on the spine doesn't go vertical, it goes sideways. You're not videoing me. Please do not.
That's okay. I want you to sit.
Oh, that's good. Okay. And then your back cover is going to be the same size as your front cover. All right? So it's going to be 6 inches wide. And then because your book is 6 inches wide, everybody makes flaps that are too small. It's like, it doesn't cost you more money to make a fatter flap, right? So make a fatter flap. So let's say your flap is 3 inches. So let's say your flap is 3, which is also going to be 8 inches tall. And that flap is 3. Okay? You can't make a document. You can't make a document without planning this out. I do this, okay? I do this for every project. Now, I have 2 ways to set up my file with this. One way is, so it's 9 and 9, that's 18, 19 and a half. So that's 19 and a half wide by, what do we do? 8 inches tall. That's the size of your full complete document, right? And you now know that that's not going to print here on campus, 19 and a half inches wide, so you're going to have to tape it together and tile it like you did your posters, right? Obviously, when it prints at a professional print shop, they have paper that is large enough. So there's 2 ways to set this up, and I'm going to show you the way I prefer. But let's mock it up now. Let me get a little eraser over here. And let's just think it through. So, what book do you guys want me to work on? Somebody give me a title. 1984. Okay, George Orwell, right? 1984. It's about the fact that we all become machines in a society, right? Isn't that? Yeah. It was probably
Big Brother Society.
Big Brothers. Thank you. I probably read it in high school.
It is just about a guy.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. I haven't read it for a long time. So what I do when I design a book, well, 1984 is, so let's say I make my book a contemporary version of 1984 of Big Brother. And when I think of Big Brother, I think of this cast shadow thing, this looming thing. Okay, so I'm going to pretend this is Big Brother, some big looming shadow. Right, so let's pretend that's a gray. So it's just a field of color, it's not necessarily an illustration, it's just kind of a looming thing. And then let's make it a contemporary cover where maybe my whole cover is a pattern of O's and 1s, and, which is computer code, right, from millions of years ago. And, right, so the whole page is the noise of data, right? All right, so maybe that's my theme. That's a type-only cover, right? And the only thing that might create a sense of something is this looming thing. Or, and this, maybe these are so small, not as big as I drew them, maybe they're so tiny, all they do is create noise and they look gray because they're so tiny. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Bless you. And bless you. And let's say my 1984 so everybody has to be in a container when Big Brother looks after you. You can't do anything out of the box, right? So this is how I start to design and I think through things. I like have a little conversation with myself. Okay, 1984. Big Brother, looming, automation, computers, surveillance, somebody watching you. So maybe you're like looked at through a peephole. So maybe we create this noise of all this data, right? In perfect little rows back here, you're following me. And maybe here is, I can only do it like this. Right, the proportions are off, but I'm going in this. So now, this is all this noisy data around here. And my title, because 1984 is, let's face it, way too famous. Everybody knows the book. You don't really need to show the perfect type of it. Now we're into the surveillance peering through this window of being spied on, right? So here's where I'm coming up with my theme. So we have data noise back here, and then 1984, and then we have George Orwell, maybe as the author, type here, right? And maybe his name is also inside a box and it's in reverse in here. I don't know. But there's my theme. So now where I've made 1984 the title, it's kind of a logo type. I always think of book cover names, titles, handled like logo types. So now, if I were to translate this to the spine, 1984 would sit on its side here, taking that, making it, reducing it, putting it here. And if I put George Orwell type here, it would now be rotated, it would sit here. Maybe I make my 1984 logo here, and here I have quotes about it, more quotes, right? And here I have a synopsis, must read for every person, blah, 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 right? And that's my back cover, and I need room for my ISBN and my UPC code here, which has to be on a white background. You all with me? Am I thinking this through? And then now I've got my two flaps. Well, what are my flaps? Maybe one of my flaps is about the author. Maybe one of my flaps is an excerpt from the book. Maybe one of my flaps is an essay by a guest author talking about the significance of 1984 and how we look at this in today's society, right? Anything. So then your flaps, you don't need photos on your flaps, but also what you need to consider is that you have margins and how you're going to use your flaps, or your quotes can be on your flaps. But your flaps hold information, and how you handle that. I actually think that most books have really unattractive flaps. They're not inspired. So there are ways to step up your game to be a better designer. Just because it's been done doesn't mean it's been done well, right? I have higher expectations for you. So given this, I want to show you how to set it up in design here, because I think it'll help you be more expedient when you design your book cover. part of your requirements, as you all know, will be to sketch out a variety of layouts and create some mock-ups of your book jacket design right here. So again, read carefully through all this. All these details, everything here, including what paper stock you put it on, even in theory, what paper stock you put it on is all part of it. And remember, paper stock can be a color. Like that was printed on probably the Pablo Neruda was printed on a blue paper or was printed on a green paper, right? Which means that the paper is part of your color palette, but notice there's no white there, which would be a knockout. Notice here this was printed on a creamy paper stock, and it was created vintage, like an an older appearance. It had like a vignette to it. So if I'm in InDesign, let me close this. There's two ways to set this up. I'm going to show you what I think is the harder way, and then I'm going to show you what I think is the easier way. And there's a reason for that. So the harder way, I think, is change everything to inches. Look at the width, which we decided is 19.5, and the height, which is 8, and it's only one-page document, and it's not facing pages. And I would actually set this up, and the margins here become difficult. So I would just leave it as kind of the default half-inch margins, and you do need the bleed set up, and here is your document. Now, the problem with this is, it was set up with 2 columns, and we want 1 column. So now what you have to do is you have to look and say, okay, what do we got going over there, right? You with me? We now have to put in guidelines. So now what I have to do is, this is a reference point, and the reason why I show you this is I want you to learn some more skills. This is a reference point in InDesign, and where this little black dot is, where my cursor is in the upper left corner, where that little black dot is where you measure any box that you create in InDesign. That's the reference point for where you place it. So for example, if I draw a box, just a rectangle, and I put it in the upper left corner and I bring it down to the bottom here, it stroked it black. I'm going to have to undo that, but let me just fill it up with color for you. Let me get rid of the stroke. Let me make it have a color so you can see it. Okay, so notice that this box, if I click here, it's at a 0 XY coordinate. Did we talk about XY coordinates before, ever? No? Okay. So XY coordinates is what measures everything on your page, where you position things. So let's say you're designing a window envelope where somebody's address has to go in a specific location. You would be measuring it, and you'd have to make sure that your window box where the text goes is in the appropriate place. And you would be guided by these XY coordinates. Now, notice that if I put my reference point in the bottom left corner here, it says, oh, the origin of the box, well, let me do this differently. Let me put it in the upper left corner. Let's make our flap 3 inches wide. So we're going to make this box 3 inches wide, right? There we go. And we're going to make the height of it 8 inches. So now, if we measured this box a reference point XY coordinates, the bottom right corner of the box is 8 inches down, right? Starts 8 inches down, and 3 inches in, because it's measuring this bottom corner. That's what reference points measure. All right. Now, the problem with this is if we wanted this blue on our flap, we'd need to create a bleed here. There we go, right? You'll follow me. All right, now, what I can choose to do is I can drag off of my ruler right here a guideline to that box and put it right at the 3-inch point. And I've got a guideline there for my fold marks, right? You with me? And in order to indicate how something folds, let's see if this works. This chair is kind of awkward here. In order to indicate a fold, let me click off my box. Let me go to this default black stroke. Let me draw a line. Let me hold my shift key down and drag a guideline here. And you make it for a fold, you make it as thin as you can, 0.25, a quarter of a point. And to indicate a fold, you make it dashed. So if I zoom in here, can you guys see that? There. That would indicate a fold mark, right? All right. Now, I'm going to make it really beefy so you do not strain your eyes to see it. There's my fold mark. So I can now, I'm going to have to create guides for myself. So now we know that this fold mark needs to be 6 inches over for the fold at the beginning of the spine. You all following me based on my drawing on the, okay. So I can take this, I can go here, I can step in and repeat my mark, or I can measure it myself, but I'm going to repeat it once. I'm going to not change it vertically. I'm only going to duplicate it horizontally 6 inches, and I'm going to repeat it, and now it gave me my spine mark, right? And now I take the same thing and I step and repeat it 1.5 inches to the other part of my spine, right? 1.5. Now I got my spine fold mark, right? And I need to do it 6 inches more for my cover, my front cover. Step and repeat it here, add 6 inches. There you go. Now, you already know that your crop marks will show when you output your PDF with crop marks, but it won't necessarily show with these fold marks. And these fold marks need to be in your bleed area down here. You see how I'm moving them down? They're not where the document is, but they're in the bleed area. You all follow me? All right. And then if I'm happy with these, all I have to do is hold my Option key down and duplicate them. And now I've got them for folding and trimming my cover. And the other part of this, why I say this is harder, is this is a bit more time consuming, I think, because the other thing I'm going to have to deal with here is now I'm going to need guidelines for my margins for setting up my text, right? So here's a guideline here, but I know that I'm not going to bring my type all the way to the fold, so I'm going to have to create guidelines for myself where all my folds are, right? But I'm also, is it too light? Can you see my, you can see my guidelines. But I'm also going to have to measure my text box. Let's say I put text here. It's not going to go fold to fold. It's going to be a 1/2 inch margin for my outside back cover, right? You all follow that. And you all know how to set that up, yes? Okay. So I would just keep continuing to do this. I'm going to save this as book cover 1. There we go. And make a new folder. There we go. Book cover. And save it. Okay. The other thing I would prefer to do, I find much easier, and you'll see why, is this. So make a new document, and I'm going to make my new document in inches. I'm going to make it the size of my book cover, which is 6 inches wide, 8 inches tall. And I'm going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. There we go. Actually, I'm only going to make it 3 pages, and you'll see why in a minute. 3 pages. And I'm going to make my margins a little smaller because a 1/2 inch on a flap is a huge margin. So I'm going to reduce it a little bit. And I'm actually going to make my bleed bigger because what the heck, it doesn't cost me more money. And hit create. And now I have 3 pages. They're not facing. I'm going to turn off on all of them. On the master page, I'm going to get rid of that column I forgot to get rid of. So they're only 1 column. There we go. So here's page 1. And let's call page 1 my outside back cover. but instead I want to make it, I'm going to start with my flap. So page 1 here, I'm going to go to my page tool. On page 1, I get those little corners that look like scrapbook corners to me. Then I'm going to change my page from being 6 inches wide to 3. There we go. And then I'm done with that. And then this one is my back cover, right? My outside back cover. And I'm going to make page 3, the third page up there, my spine. So I'm going to go back to my page tool and change it from 6 inches wide to 1.5 inches. And now it's skinny, right? All right, it's my spine. And then what I'm going to do is with my Option key, I'm going to go to page 2, and with my Option key, I'm going to duplicate a page after my spine for my front cover, the same size as my back cover. And then I'm going to go to my flap, and with my Option key, drag to the very bottom my flap for my front cover. Did you all follow what I did? Okay. And then now I'm going to select all of these by holding my Shift key down and selecting them all on my page panel. And I'm going to do this thing I showed you the other day, which is to allow my spreads to shuffle. And now if I just drag this up here, all 5 are going to line up in a row. And so now now what I have, if you look at this, is I have my flap, my back cover, my spine, my front cover, and my front cover flap. And they all have the perfect margins set up. And they're all going to give me my correct score marks and so forth, I think, when I output it, okay? So I find this easier. It just took a lot of time away. Some people think about it differently. I think this is magical. So I'm going to save this.
So the fold lines are?
So the fold lines are where each page meets.
Okay. Where you see those lines.
Yeah, where you see the black lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I'll hit undo. So I'm in my page panel. I'm going to hit undo again. I selected all of them, held my Shift key down and selected all pages in my page panel. I use the pull-out menu here called Allow Selected Spreads to Shuffle. They get bracketed, which their numbers have a bracket around them in the page panel. You see it? That means they're spreads. And you can drag any one. I just drag my second one next to page 1 up here, and they all slide up. And they slide up in sequence. I can mix and match them and move them around, but sometimes they act weird, like they'll create gaps in between or something like that. So I try to be real methodical in my step. And then I'm going to save this. And we're going to put in there, I'm going to never hide the extension, and we're going to call it book cover 2. And let me launch Illustrator. I don't want to spend too much on this because I want you guys all to have time to talk to me today, but I think this might be a little helpful for you. So here we go. So when you have your flap, for example, let's make this smaller. So here's your flap. This is your front cover flap, and I'm not going to design the whole thing. There's just a few things I'm going to show you. So here's your placeholder text here and here. I'm holding my Option key and my Shift key and duplicating it for both locations. I already told you, so let me design what I did on the board, right? So I sketched it out, and I'm going to type 010. Oops, I can't have a 2 in there. Right? It starts to look like noise, right? There we go. And I could make it really tiny, like let's say it's 6-point type, 7-point type on 6-point leading, and I change the kerning to be, I keep the kerning metric, and And right, if you look at it, let's see, it just has a grayness to it, right? It's a little too regular because all my lines are repeated and they align too much. So I'd have to mix it up a little, but yeah, is that a little better? You get the idea. I'm not going to spend time on it. But then in Illustrator, what I would do is I would choose an illustrator to build the title for my cover. And so here, for example, it's a very simple cover name. Anybody got a font in mind for me? Let's pick Arial Black, right? That looks very Big Brother, doesn't it? And Optical Kerning maybe. And maybe I do something, I don't want to spend too much time on it with the type, but if I'm thinking that I need it in a circle, I'm thinking that I have to make it equally tall as it is wide. I need to make it kind of a square shape, right? So this isn't working very well for me. So maybe there is a condensed bold font. And I don't really know what that would be. Let's try Impact. That's pretty good. There we go. And let's make it 300 points. There we go. And I'm going to do this fast and ignore color and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to take the kerning of it and I'm going to tighten the tracking of this really, really tight, so I can get it as square as possible. And I can decide, I really don't want to spend so much time on it because I know you guys will end up designing it, but I want you to get the gist of it. So then what I would do here is once I've created my graphic, I would create outlines. So this is no longer type, it's now artwork, it's art. And let me make this, I don't know why I think of this in like some horrible yellow. Let me just make a circle that's yellow or orange. There we go. And window, color. There we go. Let's make it orangey. It's an ugly, really ugly orange, isn't it? And then I'm going to go to Object Arrange, Send to Back, and kind of line this up like this. And maybe take this same circle and select it, go to my Scale tool here, click on the center, hold my Option key and my Shift key, scale it a little larger, send that to the back, Object Arrange, Send to Back. And let's make that black. And let's also copy that and edit, paste in front. I think I pasted. And bring it to the front. There. And then I want to take this front shape and that type and go to my Pathfinder tool. Let's see if this works. Sometimes I get surprises. And knock out the front from the back. Let's see if it works. Oh, didn't work. Let's break it up. Let's see if that worked. And then I can select that and delete it. I can select that and delete it, and select that and delete it, and select that, and send it to the back. Oh, I know what it did. Let's not do that. Let's just leave that. Let's see. What's that?
It's
It grouped with a circle by doing that. So I'm going to copy this, copy it, and save it. I'm going to not worry about it. No, I need to worry about it. I want one plain logo. Okay, copy it. So I copied 1984. I'm going to paste it somewhere. No, paste it in front. There we go. And I'm going to take this circle and go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, and select that and do that Pathfinder thing again. Break it up, deselect that and delete it, select that and delete it, select that and delete it, take my circle, send my circle to the back, Object, Arrange, send to back, and then take this type which was not cut up, bring it to the front. I'm still thinking this through, you guys, obviously. Oh, I might have to ungroup this. That's what I might have to do. Let's try that.
This is where layers would be.
Oh, you're smart, John. Cut this out. You see what I got going on here. If you go to visualize this, I went to view, view outline. You go to view outline. That's how I can see what I've got here. And my problem is this is the stuff I want to ungroup. Let's see if I can do that. Ungroup. Let's see if I can cut that out. I cut it out. Huh. I don't know how I did that, okay. I cut it out, I pasted it. I need to make these compound paths. How does that work? So, all right. There you go. I got the effect I wanted, right? Except for this one. That's interesting. Object Arrange. If I go to Object Arrange, make a compound path. That one didn't work.
Something happened to that. Look how the four.
Well, the 4 picked up the border. I don't know what happened to the 4. Yeah. All right, somehow I faked it for you guys. I just don't want to take all your time doing this. But what I wanted was one icon so you can see that you can place it and reduce it and it never loses value. If I had made this circle in InDesign and let the 1984 come through the circle in InDesign, you never would have had the stroke consistently scale up or down for every time you did it. You'd have to guess how heavy your black stroke would be. But because I save this now like this, 1984, and I save it as a native Illustrator document, so it ends in AI here. The advantage of this is when I come to InDesign now and I go to File, Place, Command D, and I place the 1984 icon, I can place it here, right? I can hold my Option key, place it here, and scale it down. here. I can duplicate it holding my Option key down here. I can scale it down for my spine, and I can rotate it. And now I've got my logo and my title, I want to say, in my 3 locations without having to redraw it 3 times. And it's easily scalable. So the proportion of the stroke around this circle is the same as the proportion of the stroke around this circle as this circle. Does that help you guys? All right. The only thing I wanted to check out for you is this. When I save this and I export it as a PDF with crop marks and bleeds, let's just try that. I'm not sure if it will give you the score marks or not. I can't remember if it automatically does it. So we'll do bleed marks, we'll do page information, we'll use bleed settings, and what we have to make sure in order for it to print properly, this is all of you need to remember this. So pay attention if you're setting it up as spreads, you click spreads. So it prints out as one PDF, one single PDF, and you click export, and it gave you automatic score marks, which is why I like this. That's what I was double checking. And I made a really big bleed area so you could see your score marks easily. Okay? So beyond that, there's other things that you can do. For example, there's techniques like you can take your type here and you can make it semi-bold and you can increase the point size. You could highlight different words with a different font for something that you want to stand out, for example. And there you go. So there's ways, there's techniques to make things more interesting when you handle your type. Also, if you're using pull quotes, you might choose to do this. You might choose you might choose to make a pull quote. I'm going to eyedrop this type to get there faster. Oh, that didn't work. We'll just go bigger. So here might be your quote, a spoonful of sugar. And then what you might choose to do is select this. I noticed somebody had their quote marks as an apostrophe. So make sure you type something so it knows it's not an apostrophe when you grab your quote marks like this. And then I delete my type, and then I have the correct alignment of quote marks. Still didn't work right. Maybe that's just what they look like here. Let's pick different quote marks.
When I did them, they looked weird to me.
Yeah, there. These are cuter quote marks.
I actually went into the glyphs
yeah.
to find them because I liked them better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes they don't always bracket unless you have something in the middle of it. And then what I'll end up doing is I'll copy it. I'll put it in a new text box. I'll make it, let's say, 200 points. And I'll copy the color. And then I might put my quote marks out like this. Do you see what I mean? Where they become more like a graphic. And then I'll duplicate this, Option key, and duplicate it. Type a letter. And then get my other quote mark, and then delete what's in front of it. So I get their correct bracketed quote mark, the smart quote. And sometimes quotes look more interesting. They become kind of a graphic themselves when you handle it that way. So there's little techniques you can use. The only other thing that I think that some of you might fall down on would be if you wanted to attribute something here. If you take this spoonful of sugar, hit a return, hit a long dash, a space, and say Mary Poppins talking about 1984. And then maybe what this is, you know, in proportion, this might be 10-point type and might be flush right to the quote here, like that. And then you might add your leading to this line. So make sure that you attribute quotes to people and have a certain elegance and a hierarchy of how you use somebody's name to attribute a quote.
I've seen that treatment where they don't use the close quotes, just the open quote.
Oh, they don't close them up. There you
A
go.
lot of times that's cleaner.
John's saying, get rid of this, Vicki. What are you thinking? That's what he's saying. Okay. So the reason I do my book title type in Illustrator is I find it's easier to place in InDesign and scale it proportionally where you need it and rotate it. I think it's I prefer handling it that way. And the only other thing I wanted to show you, for example, so if I select all this, let me make it really small. When you're in InDesign, and let's say your title is a longer book, what is it called? And I'm going to pick a different font because I know where I'm headed with this. I'm not happy with my examples. I want a fluid looking font. Anybody got a thought? All right, we'll try this. When I work with type and I want it to nest in a unique way, I will set my words in Illustrator separately. So I'll set one word, I'll hold my Option key down, type the next word, hold my Option key down to get the next one. And then I start to play with things. I start to look at how I want things. Do I want my H to come ascend and come in between these letters? Do I want the H that's ascending higher than the S to kind of tuck into the? And do I want my F here to work with the descender of the P? And then do I want my type? How do I want things to nest? And then because they're separate, I feel like I get to play with them more easily and decide how I want the type to work, right? But you have to be careful when you do this because I think this says the of shape water personally. So, but you see what I'm saying? And then what happens is once you start to figure out that this is how you want your type, again, if I'm happy with this, that's not too bad. You might decide that you want of to be smaller. Doesn't usually look good when you do stuff like that. Sometimes it does. Right? And then maybe I find, let me cut out the W because it doesn't let me grab this, but maybe I select the, and I drop the word of, and it changed the point size of it in Illustrator. It picked up what the point size was of the word of, and then I place the word water, and maybe that works better. And maybe if I tuck that over closer to the H, I'm happy with that. And if that's the case, then I would take this and I would go to type and I would create outlines. And let me delete this. Save as shape of water. And I could go here to activate all these pages, hold my Option key down, and duplicate my spread. And let me delete that, and let me delete that, and let me hit Command D, File Place, Shape of Water. And I can scale this proportionally, again, to decide on what I want it to look like on my page. And toggle it so it's a fill. Go to CMYK so I get color choices, fill it, and I don't know. Does it help you start to think through how to do your covers? You might also just decide that Shape of Water follows the flow, or it's really tiny. You know, titles don't have to be big. And because I have this so available to scale up and down, think of how many variations you can play with as you do your process, right? Does that help you duplicate it?
Yeah. A quick question.
Yeah.
You know, we place a great proportion of stuff. So what's the pros or cons, or just a no-no? Like if you just copy it and paste it. Like if you copy it from Illustrator and paste it to your design, is there a disadvantage?
That's really a really great question.
Because you place it, in order to place it, you have to save it, which is fine. You know, you save the file and you have it.
Well, if you...
But there's sometimes where you just want to...
Yeah, where you want to paste it, where you want to paste your vector and be done. Yeah, but if you don't have your InDesign file, you don't have your links. And I like having links. I find that I use graphics from other sources.
Yeah, and you build a library.
You build a library of graphics.
That. But is there any...
No, as a vector, you know, there's special effects that it'll... I never use special effects in Illustrator. So if you're only using a vector and you're pasting your vector into InDesign, I don't think it's a disadvantage.
You can still manipulate it.
The only thing I find for students when they paste, so Susie's question was, if I'm in Illustrator and this is a vector graphic right here and it's filled with black and I copy it and I go, so File, Edit, Copy, let's make sure I did it. It doesn't always work. And I come here and I go to my back cover. What's the difference if I don't just paste my vector right here? It's not placed, it's not linked, it's embedded in this file. The advantage actually of it, as I talk it through with you right now, because your question is in here, without going back to my original, I can change my colors because it's a vector in InDesign and I can tinker with it without going back to the original.
So it doesn't distort it or
change
it? Or,
so good question. So what I was going to say is I find most students, many students, not all students, are not as conscientious about not distorting their art when they scale it. When you place art like this file here, when you place it and I click on the content, I can now see that I placed it at 77.2%, and I can see that it's proportionate. What I find is many people will forget to use the Shift key when they scale something, and they'll just scale it, and you won't know if you've changed its proportions now because there's nothing controlling it. How I would be sure to scale it proportionally is I'm holding my Shift key, pulling from the corner and going diagonal. But I can also scale it and distort it. And then what happens is you start to see things that are slightly off, and your eye might catch it. So that's why I usually, almost always, will just choose to place it instead. Okay.
I'm just curious.
That's a really good
Yeah,
question.
there's just
That's a good
options that,
question.
you know, just didn't know the
Yeah.
rules
Yeah, well.
within the programs.
Well, what happens is the rules change because all the softwares are smarter and smarter and smarter. So is there anything for your book you want me to demonstrate for you that I didn't go over? No, really, we're that thorough. Okay, so what's really important in your design is to use a grid layout. You'll be using a grid layout. Well, that's not good, is it? Use a grid layout, even if you're using a grid layout for, let's say, your quotes that you use on your back cover or your flaps. Your cover design doesn't necessarily have to be a grid layout. Make sure that you look at sample books and see which way the spine goes and what information's on the spine. You'll have your author's name on the spine, and some books have taglines, like Bo, I don't know, does 1984 have a tagline? Not that I know of, but you could make a tagline if you wanted.
I guess Big Brother is watching you.
Okay. And, you know, maybe where you put Big Brother is watching you is you come into this type right here and you make it orange. There we go. And you type Big Brother is watching you. There we go. And look, I don't know if you can see it, actually. That was kind of fun. Which is, in all that code, there's like this sneaky little line of text, right? That's kind of fun. Or maybe you do it, keep it in black, and you have all these subliminal things that you can't find unless you're really looking, which would be fun too. But trying to think what other.
Or the NSA, as you mentioned.
We are all being watched. Here's some book cover examples and design briefs. Inspiration. So all the inspiration, here's your sketches. Here's the color palettes. This was created not by doing the spreads, but by doing that one full page thing. You can see it. They had to drag down their guidelines, which I think is hard work. Look at a way that handwritten type makes noise, creates texture. Right? And then when you submit this photographed, I say submit a photograph of it, of your book cover wrapped around the book, a hardbound book, but also photograph it, go to Barnes & Noble if you have one nearby, and throw it on a table where they have all those tables laying down, and put yours in the mix so you can see how it looks in the noise of all the other publications, and if it would be a book you'd pick up, or put it on a shelf where you can see where your spine shows up and if it's readable. You can find the publisher. You can use the publisher's logo if you wish. Does everybody know how to grab a publisher's logo and utilize it if they need to? Would you like me to show you? Yes. Okay. And then I'll probably stop talking. So let's pick I don't know why I'm thinking of Random House, but Random House logo. There we go. So I would go to Random House logo. I would go to images. You're stealing it, don't forget. Decide which one you want to put on here. I would also go to tools. I would go to size. I would see if I could find one that's kind of big, bigger than 1,000 pixels wide. And lo and behold, we have lots of choices, right? Do you guys have a choice you want? No? You're all quiet. Should we pick the penguin? Here, we're picking this one. And we're going to take this, we're going to click on it, we're going to save the image as. Look at that. This is already a PNG file. Do you see this checkerboard in the back? It means it's already silhouetted. It means your life is so easy this way. So if you pick one that's a PNG file, you save the image as, we'll put it in our type book, and we'll save the same thing where it's not a PNG file, it's a JPEG. And I'll take this and I'll save the image as, and I'll put it there, and I'll show you the two ways to do this. When you're in Photoshop, you go to File, Open, you find that PNG one. Didn't I save it? No? Maybe I put it in the type book? Oh, I did. Okay, so the PNG one has a transparent background. It's really easy. So that means I could put it on a field of color. So what I would do here is I'd go to image, I'd go to image size. Again, I'd make it 300 pixels per inch, which it already is. I'd say OK. I'd change the mode to CMYK, say OK. I'd save it, I'd save as, I'd save it as a Photoshop document. I'm going to put it in my book cover, and it's a PSD file, and I save it, and I'm happy. I go to the other one, which was in the type book, the one that was a JPEG, which what I would do here is I'd go to select, I'd go to color range, I'd select everything white in the background. Everything white is now selected, right? And I'd go to select inverse. So now everything black is selected. And all I have to do here is click on this on the layer panel, add a mask, and it gets rid of all the white. So now I have a see-through background, and I can put this one in color. And again, same thing, go to color mode. It's grayscale, it's black ink. You can leave it as that, that's fine. You could go to image size. Well, this is 450 pixels an inch. That's overkill. I'm happy. That's great. I save it. And again, I'll save this as a PSD file also, Photoshop native document. And then when you are in InDesign, again, I can, let's say I make my spine this yellow color. And maybe I'll end up making this logo. Maybe I'll end up making this logo white so it stands out from the spine. But what I'm showing you is here I can go to Command D and I can find the logo. My cursor loads with it and I click and drag. And because it's a transparent background, you don't have to compete with a white if you download the logo from the internet. It's transparent, so now the yellow shows through. And if I go to the other one, which I think I saved in the wrong location, type book, that one, same thing, I can click and drag, and it's got a transparent background. Okay? So, how's that? Did I answer every possible question on the planet, maybe? Yeah? Anything anybody wants me to show you? In order to change, if this is how I left my spine, for example, I might click on this. This is advantageous here. I'd hit Control, I'd go to Edit Original, and it's going to pop open my original file. And then here I can select the yellow field and make it white. And I'll have to select these yellow fields because I kind of monkeyed with this differently than normal. And it's, uh-oh, that's not good. See if that works. All right, that one's white. That one's white. That one's white. That one I'm cutting out of here. Ah, there we go. And now I'm going to save this under a new name, and I'll call it white, and save it. Okay. And what happens is when I go back to this document, I can select this hit Command D, File, Place. It's going to pick up all the attributes that I had, rotated, size, scale here, and it's just going to replace it perfectly right there in position. Okay.
Another reason to place.
Another reason to place. Another reason to place, actually. And for example, here, if I wanted to hit this one, what was the other thing I was going to show you? If I hit this one and I go to Edit Original, and let's say I don't want my color to be yellow, but I want my color for everything to be blue. In Illustrator, I could go select same fill color because I don't want that same mistake to happen to me. And I can make it blue, and I can just resave it over itself, and it will automatically update it when I'm back in my InDesign document because the file was placed there. And it updates everything universally. Anything you change, anything I change to that one logo in Illustrator because it's placed and linked, if I edit original, it updates all my links of that one file. Another reason to link it.
Does it save it in the blue and in the yellow? Or does it change
No,
it
the
to
yellow
blue?
is old news now.
So, okay,
It's
so
gone.
whatever
It's
you
history.
update and edit it to is what's saved.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And the original.
Yes.
Okay.
Like if I was worried that I wanted to use it in white and blue and yellow,
You save it.
I would save the yellow, I would save the blue, and
That's just your decision.
right. Okay. We're good. So next week, so we're done today. If you'd like to stay and work in the class or talk to me or get guidance, I'm happy to help you. For next week, what I'd like everybody to do is make sure that you've brought in your progress for your book cover and your progress for your type publication. Okay? I'm pretty sure we're done with all of our quizzes. We are long done. And we're done with all of our design inspiration. So all you should really be working on is your type publication. So let me tell you what's in front of you for the rest of the semester. For the rest of the semester, you're working on your type publication at home. All your exercises have been completed. All your quizzes are completed. You have a book jacket design project while you work on your type publication. The day that you submit your type publication book for printing is also the day you'll be done with your book jacket, and then you'll be able to work on the last assignment, which isn't showing up here. Oh, yes it is. Typeface design. That's our last assignment. And you'll do that after you're done with your type publication book and it's at the printer, where you design a typeface. Okay? So any questions for anybody? So I do have I have a question for you. Is it helpful for us in class to critique each other's work together? So even if your work's not the one critiqued, do you feel that you benefit from it? You do. Okay.
Some things that you bring up or talk about, that's how it applies, that you can apply to your work.
Right, that you can
because
apply.
It raises different learning tools. For,
Right.
For me, it's beneficial.
Okay.
Because there's things I've never knew that you showed during this conversation.
Right.
That you know.
Right, and it takes other people's work to have a conversation.
So
Yeah.
I personally.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, I want this class to be beneficial for everybody. So any questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to stop the video. I hope to goodness it's recording, John. But here it is.